husband's aunt gets drunk and ruins our wedding because no one cares about her whims, but karma does its job when her videos go viral and customers don't want to buy from her. I got married a week ago, and what I thought would be a quiet, beautiful ceremony turned into a total disaster, thanks to my husband's aunt. I still can't believe how everything spiraled out of control so quickly, and I need to vent before I lose my mind. To give you some context, I'm 31 and my husband is 33. We've been together for 5 years and engaged for 1. What should have been the happiest day of our lives ended up being a nightmare because of one person. My husband and I met in quite a unique situation. About 6 years ago, I went to a cooking class with some friends, something we had planned as a fun afternoon. I was never very good at cooking, but the idea was just to have a good time. It turns out my husband was also in that class, although he actually knows how to cook. It was more of a birthday gift he had received, an experience rather than anything else. We ended up working together on a dish, laughing about how bad I was at everything, and what started as a joke about my cooking skills turned into a real conversation. From that moment we just clicked. It was as if destiny had brought us both there that day. Since then, everything flowed naturally and here we are today married. We planned the wedding with a lot of time and detail. We wanted something small, intimate, just with our closest family and some friends. We didn't want anything too complicated. After all, our relationship has always been more about meaningful moments than flashy events. However, one person managed to ruin everything we had planned. My husband's aunt. And to be honest, I shouldn't have been that surprised because it's not the first time she's caused problems. My husband's family has been amazing to me from the start. I never had to deal with the typical drama of difficult in-laws or problematic siblings. They accepted me with open arms, and I've always felt like part of the family. But there's one exception, the aunt. She's my mother-in-law's younger sister, and has always been a headache for everyone. It's not just with me. She's had issues with everyone in the family. My mother-in-law has done her best to keep her in check, but she's like a ticking time bomb at every family gathering. Once my husband told me a story from when he was a child. He was about 10 at the time, and his aunt was babysitting him while his mom went out for a couple of hours. Apparently, everything was fine until the aunt decided it would be a good idea to get drunk while babysitting her nephew. My husband, being a child, didn't understand what was happening when he saw her drinking glass after glass. Things got worse when she started saying hurtful things, mocking him for not being manly enough or for not behaving how she thought a boy should. My husband, just a kid at the time, felt devastated. That was the first time he had to deal with his aunt's drunk version, something that, unfortunately, would continue to happen at family events for years. Needless to say, when his mom came home and saw how her sister was, she was furious. The aunt was never in charge of babysitting any family kid again. Another example that always comes to mind is how this woman behaves at family gatherings. Every time there's a party or a celebration, it's only a matter of time before she starts drinking too much and makes a scene. A few years ago at Christmas, after several drinks, she decided it would be a great idea to climb onto the dining table and sing carols at the top of her lungs. Not only was she terribly out of tune, but when everyone asked her to get down, she started screaming that they didn't appreciate her enough, and that no one understood her art. The situation only calmed down when her sister, my mother-in-law, intervened and took her outside to cool off. My mother-in-law has always tried to keep her in control, but sometimes it seems like a losing battle. So when we announced that we were getting married and threw a small party to celebrate the engagement, it was no surprise that the aunt started drinking too much, despite her sister's attempts to moderate her. I remember that at the beginning of the night, everything was fine. She came up to me and started talking about all the ideas she had for the wedding, suggesting changes here and there. I tried to be polite and told her that we had already started planning everything, and that it would be a small ceremony, nothing too complicated. But after a few glasses of wine, she became insistent. She started talking louder and louder, saying that it was disrespectful of me not to consider her ideas. The situation escalated when she began complaining out loud in the middle of the party, saying that our wedding would be boring, and that she should be in charge of the preparations. No one paid her much attention because, to be honest, everyone is used to her outbursts when she's drunk. Her husband, of course, was completely oblivious to the situation, as if he didn't care at all about what his wife was doing. And her daughter, who is now 7, was simply playing in a corner, also used to this kind of scene. 2 weeks before the wedding, at another family event, my husband's aunt caused yet another scene. This time it was because she wanted her daughter to be the flower girl at our wedding. We had already promised that role to my niece, who was absolutely thrilled about the task, so we didn't want to disappoint her by changing plans. My husband and I had discussed this before, and we both agreed that having his aunt's daughter as the flower girl would be a bad idea, mainly because it would mean having her mother too involved in the preparations, and we knew that would cause problems. But the aunt didn't accept our decision. She insisted that her daughter deserved to be the flower girl, and that it was disrespectful of us not to have considered her. I tried to reason with her, but she simply wouldn't listen. Eventually, my mother-in-law had to step in, telling her to be quiet and let my husband and me plan our wedding as we wished. The aunt fell silent, though she was clearly angry. In the days that followed, she didn't mention the issue again, and I thought she had let it go. I was very wrong. The wedding day arrived, and the last thing on my mind was the aunt. I was busy getting ready, enjoying the moment, surrounded by the people I loved most. But while I was distracted, the aunt decided to stir things up. She dressed her daughter in a white dress and gave her a basket of flowers, ready for her to walk down the aisle as a flower girl too. When the moment came for my niece to make her entrance, the aunt pushed her daughter forward to walk alongside her. It was an awkward moment, but no one wanted to ruin the ceremony, so they let it happen. They didn't want to embarrass the aunt's daughter either, as she wasn't to blame for her mother's behavior. I thought that would be it, her little act of revenge, and that the rest of the night would go smoothly. But I was very wrong. When it was time for dinner, the aunt began moving around the tables, rearranging people because, according to her, the seating wasn't organized correctly. My mother-in-law, who was already aware of her antics, told her to sit down and leave things as they were, reminding her that the night wasn't about her. The aunt, clearly annoyed, decided it was time to start drinking. And since there was an open bar, it didn't take long for her to get progressively drunker. She began loudly complaining that the wedding was poorly organized, that the menu was boring, and that the chairs were uncomfortable. But since she was the drunk aunt at the party, no one paid much attention to her, and some even found her funny. As always, my mother-in-law tried to intervene. She took her outside, helped her get some air, and even spoke to the bartender to stop serving her alcohol. But the aunt is sneaky when it comes to drinking. She found abandoned glasses on tables and drank from them without anyone noticing. I only found out about this later, after some people told me what had happened. I thought everything was under control. My mother-in-law was handling the situation, and theoretically, the aunt wasn't drinking anymore. But when it came time to cut the cake, the aunt saw another opportunity to ruin an important moment. My husband and I were about to do the typical cake-cutting ritual, where one gently smears a bit of cake on the other's face. A small, light-hearted act. But out of nowhere, the aunt grabbed a piece of cake with her hands and threw it in my face. Everyone fell silent for a second, and the only sound was the aunt's drunken laughter. My mother-in-law was the first to react. She rushed over, grabbed the aunt by the arm, and asked what on earth she thought she was doing. The aunt, slurring her words and laughing, said she was just having a bit of fun. My mother-in-law, in a serious tone, told her that this was the bride and groom's moment and that she had no right to ruin it. But the aunt, completely drunk, responded that she didn't know that was the case because, according to her, since we had done such a poor job organizing the wedding, maybe things were different now, and anyone could have fun with the cake. At that point, my husband, I, and several guests suggested it would be best if she went to bed. We asked her husband to take care of her, but instead of complying, the aunt pulled away from my mother-in-law and climbed onto a nearby table. Her apparent intention was to give a speech or start singing again. But between the heels and the amount of alcohol she had consumed, when she tried to stand on the table, she lost her balance and fell. Luckily, it wasn't a serious fall. She could have hit her head, but she did break her arm while trying to cushion her fall. They had to call an ambulance, and the wedding was completely ruined. What should have been a special night ended in total chaos. My husband and I were devastated, and many of our guests didn't know how to react. I'm grateful to those who stayed until the end, but the truth is the atmosphere was already completely destroyed. We waited a few days before speaking to the aunt. We wanted to give her time to recover from her broken arm, and maybe reflect on what she had done. When we finally called her, we told her that she had a serious alcohol problem among other issues, and that until she did something about it, we preferred that she stay away from us. My mother-in-law also called her and told her the same thing. What happened at the wedding was too much. I'm writing this because I needed to vent. I've read many stories in this sub about entitled people, and after what happened, I at least want to share my experience with people who might understand. I don't know if my relationship with my husband's aunt will ever recover, but for now, I'm grateful that both my husband and his family are on my side in this. Update 1. I've been surprised by how many people have shared similar stories about entitled family members, many of them also dealing with addiction issues. Honestly, reading your experiences has made me feel like I'm not alone in this, and while some of the situations are pretty wild, I couldn't help but laugh at a few. The story about the mom who insisted her son only wear red made my day. It was absolutely surreal. But I know many of you have been asking for an update, especially regarding my husband's aunt and her alcohol addiction, so here I am to tell you what's been happening since then, including a new situation related to my wedding that I never expected would happen. To start, I need to clarify something I didn't mention in my previous post. My husband's aunt owns a home goods store. It's not a huge business, but she's been running it for several years, and I have to admit she's had some success, especially online. She sells both in her physical store and through social media, which has allowed her to reach a much larger audience than you'd expect from someone living in a small town. In fact, if she relied solely on local customers, she'd probably sell one item a week. But thanks to her online presence, business is going pretty well. What's interesting is that on her social media, she comes across as a completely different person than she is in real life. She seems like a charming businesswoman, always smiling and giving off very positive vibes. Nothing like the person those of us who really know her are familiar with. If she only depended on in-person sales, she wouldn't be doing as well. Here's the issue. At my wedding, we didn't have a no-phone policy. We're not famous, and it didn't seem like the kind of event where we'd need to ask people to leave their devices at the door. Honestly, it never even crossed my mind that it might be necessary. Well, it turns out that someone, and we're not exactly sure who, recorded my aunt's spectacle at the wedding. And it wasn't just one person. Apparently, several people filmed her attempt to climb onto a table, and her subsequent fall from different angles. As you can imagine, those videos didn't take long to hit the internet. And I'm not exaggerating when I say my aunt has become a sort of mini celebrity on TikTok. The video of her falling while drunkenly trying to give a speech has gone viral. And not only that, it's been featured in a compilation of funny wedding moments. I won't say which one for privacy reasons, but there's one where she's compared to King Kong, which sounds cruel, but after watching the video, well, it's hard not to see the comparison. At first, my husband and I tried not to pay too much attention to it. However, since my aunt was already known for her small business, this has started to have real-world consequences. People have begun to recognize her in the product photos she posts because, of course, being the narcissist she is, she couldn't just photograph the items she's selling, she has to be in the pictures with them. And well, you know how the internet works. The comments on her posts started filling up with people asking, "Are you the drunk lady who tried to climb a table at a wedding?" So far, it's mostly people mocking her viral moment, but it's escalated to the point where the aunt decided to disable comments on her posts. I guess she didn't expect this level of exposure, especially under these circumstances. Now, on a more serious note, my mother-in-law, who has always been very understanding and patient with her sister, has been talking to her since the wedding incident. She's told her that she really needs to seek help for her alcohol problem. My mother-in-law has approached the topic incredibly carefully but firmly. She's explained that it's no longer a matter of her being a social drinker, who occasionally has one too many, and says inappropriate things. She's pointed out that her behavior is affecting those around her, and more importantly, that she's already injured herself because of alcohol. And if she continues like this, she could not only hurt herself but also endanger others. This last point is what worries my mother-in-law the most. Because yes, at the wedding she broke her arm, but next time it could be something much worse. And we're not just talking about accidents like the one at the wedding, we're talking about driving drunk or doing something even more reckless. However, as many of you might guess, the aunt hasn't accepted any of this. In her view, she doesn't have a drinking problem. She claims that everyone else has a problem with her, and that we're all exaggerating what happened at the wedding. She insists it was just a party, and that people are unfairly judging her for having a bit of fun. She says that if she'd managed to climb the table and sing, she'd probably be considered the life of the party right now. I suppose she doesn't remember the moment the way the rest of us do. In any case, this is incredibly frustrating because, despite efforts to make her see that her behavior isn't normal or acceptable, she just won't listen. To her, it's as if everyone is against her, as if we're all looking for a flaw when in her mind, it was all just a misunderstanding. My husband and I have come to the conclusion that for now there isn't much more we can do. Her denial is so strong that not even her sister can reason with her. For now, my husband and I have decided to keep some distance. As long as she's not willing to seek help, we don't want her behavior to continue affecting us as it has. My mother-in-law has also started setting clearer boundaries with her, which has pleasantly surprised me because I know how hard it is for her to confront her younger sister this way. So that's the update for now. I know many of you were hoping for some kind of miracle resolution where the aunt realizes she has a problem and seeks help, but unfortunately, things in real life aren't always that simple. Update 2. It's been 2 weeks since my last post, and honestly, I don't even know where to begin. So much has happened that it's hard to keep everything straight, but I'll do my best to explain. First, the aunt has now decided that everything happening to her is our fault, mine and my husband's. And when I say everything, I mean she's blaming us for the supposed drop in sales at her store. According to her, the viral video of her fall at our wedding has hurt her business, and now her sales have significantly decreased. I'm not sure how true that is or if it's just a small seasonal fluctuation, which is pretty normal for any online or physical store. But she's adamant that her sales are down, and that it's all because of the wedding fiasco. Honestly, I don't know how real that loss is, or if she's just looking for someone to blame. Her store's success relies a lot on the image she projects, both in person and on social media. But to be completely honest, I don't believe the drop is as significant as she's making it out to be. What bothers me most is that she's placing the blame squarely on me. According to her, I allowed people to record that video at our wedding. She claims that if I had imposed some kind of phone ban or been more vigilant, that video wouldn't exist. She accuses me of being complicit in all of this, as if I had orchestrated people to record her and made sure to capture every angle of her fall. All of this while I was literally trying to stop her from ruining our wedding even further. It's not like I could have predicted she would climb on a table and fall like that. Naturally, people are going to pull out their phones and film when someone makes a spectacle of themselves. But of course, the aunt doesn't see it that way, and now she's demanding that I delete all the videos circulating online. What's worse is that she doesn't seem to understand how the internet works. Even if I wanted to, I don't have the power to make those videos disappear. The worst part is that now she not only wants me to delete the videos, but she also believes I should compensate her for the supposed losses her business has suffered. From what my mother-in-law has told me, because the aunt complains to her, which I have to admit is a bit of a relief, she claims I owe her $15,000 for the losses she's had this month alone. I have no idea where she got that number. I don't believe she's lost that much money in such a short amount of time, and to be honest, I don't even think her store was making that much before all of this happened. It seems absurd that she thinks I'm responsible for that amount of money, as if I somehow made her fall off the table at the wedding. It's clear that she feels entitled to demand whatever she wants, just as she tried to impose her ideas on our wedding. Now she thinks she can ask us for ridiculous amounts of money to make up for something that was entirely her fault. Obviously, I'm not going to pay her anything. I'm not giving her a single cent for something that was completely her own doing. As for her husband, many of you have asked what he's doing in all of this. Honestly, not much. I don't know if he just doesn't want to get involved or if he simply doesn't care, but so far, he hasn't done anything significant to address the situation. If I were the aunt, I'm sure my husband would at least try to talk to me, but it's like he couldn't care less about what's going on. So that's the current situation. The aunt is blaming us for her business problems, demanding compensation, and still in complete denial about her role in everything that's happened. Meanwhile, my husband and I are standing our ground, refusing to take responsibility for her behavior or pay for her supposed losses. It's been a stressful few weeks, but we're doing our best to move on from this mess. Update 3. Well, it was bound to happen sooner or later, although I sincerely hoped it wouldn't come to this. Before I get into the details, I want to clarify that, fortunately, things didn't escalate too much, and no one was injured, which is a relief amid all this chaos. My husband's aunt had a car accident, and she had been drinking before getting behind the wheel. To make matters worse, her daughter was in the car with her. Thankfully, no one was hurt. Neither them nor anyone else on the road. The accident wasn't serious, but it has left all of us in shock. The silver lining in this situation is that it wasn't a tragedy, and I think that's the only thing we're clinging to right now for comfort. What's most surprising about this is that the accident finally seems to have woken up the aunt's husband. But this incident appears to have been the breaking point. While it's hard to believe it had to go this far for him to realize the seriousness of the situation, at least now he's convinced that his wife urgently needs help. After what's happened, even he insists that she must seek professional help to address her alcohol addiction. My mother-in-law and I both believe that this time, the aunt won't have any other choice. Not because she wants to, but because the circumstances have now pushed her to a point where she can't escape it. After the accident, she was arrested for driving under the influence. This means that, aside from the legal consequences, there will likely be a court order requiring her to enter rehab or seek treatment for her addiction. At least that's what we're hoping for. And my mother-in-law is quite optimistic that this might be the push her sister needs to finally do something about it. And if the viral video from my wedding wasn't bad enough for her reputation, this accident has only made things worse. As I mentioned before, the aunt had become a small internet celebrity because of that viral video, and now her accident hasn't gone unnoticed. People are already commenting on social media, recognizing her and calling her out for driving under the influence. It seems like her story is only growing and continuing to damage her public image. In any case, we're hopeful that this time, something will finally change. Update 4. After 2 months, I finally have some significant news about my husband's aunt. For those of you who have been following the story, I'm sure you'll be happy to hear that after everything that's happened, it seems like there's a positive change in her life. The most important update is that the aunt has completed a 30-day rehabilitation program. It seems like this time she's taken things seriously. I know we all had our doubts about whether she would truly take responsibility for her problem, but at least for now, the rehab has had a positive impact. At the most recent family event she attended, a child's birthday party, she didn't drink at all. Admittedly, part of that was because there was no alcohol at the event. It was a kids' party after all, and part of it was because no one brought alcohol out of respect for her recent rehab stay. Still, her behavior was noticeably different. She didn't cause any scenes, and she didn't have that arrogant attitude she used to show at previous gatherings. In fact, she was much calmer and more grounded. It was a relief for everyone. As for her business, the aunt had to temporarily close it. Spending a month in rehab isn't exactly compatible with running a business, especially when so much of her store's success relied on her presence, both in person and on social media. At first, she seemed worried about this, but honestly, seeing her progress, I think it's good that she's taking time to focus on her recovery. My husband and I think that maybe in the future she can try to reopen the store or even find a new way to reinvent her business. The best part of all this is seeing my mother-in-law's reaction. For her, witnessing this change in her sister has been a huge relief. She's been supporting her all this time, but she's also suffered a lot because of the problems the aunt has caused. My mother-in-law always stood by my side, especially when her sister treated me poorly or tried to impose her ideas, and she never let the aunt's behavior ruin our relationship. It's one of the reasons I appreciate her so much as a mother-in-law. She's always been fair and tried to handle the difficult situation with her sister as best as she could. Now that her sister seems to be improving, I can see a peace in her that she hasn't had in a long time. So that's the latest for now, unless the aunt falls back into her old habits. But for everyone's sake, let's hope that doesn't happen.